They say love is blind. And sometimes, the very thing that's supposed to bring healing brings the deepest wound of all. Joanie Lamb built Daystar Television from the ground up. 40 years of ministry, 40 years of marriage to Marcus Lamb. She stood before millions of viewers week after week and told them that God restores what is broken. And then, Marcus died, and Joni fell in love again. But that love came with red flags that her children saw clearly, that her closest friends saw clearly, that her audience saw clearly. She couldn't see them, and by the time it was all over, her son had been fired from the ministry his parents built. Jonathan wasn't given a phone call to say goodbye as his mother lay dying. And Joanie Lamb passed away at 65 with a broken family behind her. Today, we are asking a question that needs to be asked. Was the love between Joanie Lamb and Doug Weiss a blessing? Or was it the thing that ultimately cost her everything? Before we go anywhere, let's be clear about who Joanie Lamb was. She was not a villain in this story. Joanie Lamb co-founded Daystar Television Network in 1993 alongside her husband, Marcus Lamb. What started as a single station in Dallas grew into one of the largest Christian television networks in the world, reaching over 100 million homes globally. She hosted Joni Table Talk for decades. She was known for her warmth, her faith, and her advocacy for women and families. When Marcus admitted to infidelity in 2010, Joni chose to stay, publicly declaring her belief that God hates divorce and that restoration was always possible. This is important. Remember it. She was a woman who believed deeply in the sanctity of marriage, in a covenant, in fighting for your family. Which makes what happened next all the more painful to examine. Marcus Lamb died on November 30th, 2021, from COVID-19 complications. He was 64, and Joni was suddenly alone, for the first time in 40 years, at the helm of a global ministry. That is a grief most of us cannot comprehend. But grief, as we are about to see, can make even the wisest people vulnerable. Dr. Doug Weiss is a marriage counselor, sex therapist, author, and the founder of Heart to Heart Counseling Center in Colorado Springs. He is also the president of the American Association for Sex Addiction Therapy. On paper, he is someone who has built an entire career on helping marriages survive. Which is why what he did with his own marriage is so striking. Doug Weiss had been married to his wife Lisa for over 30 years. They had built a life together. And then, in January 2022, just 2 months after Marcus Lamb died, Doug filed for divorce from Lisa. The divorce was finalized in May 2022. Now, here is where we have to be careful and fair. Doug has publicly claimed that he was abused in that marriage for over 3 decades. That is his account. And we are not dismissing it. But here's the question the facts raise on their own. If the marriage was truly that unbearable for 30-plus years, why did the divorce filing come 2 months after Marcus Lamb died? That question has never been satisfactorily answered. What we do know is this. Doug Weiss had openly expressed a desire to have a television show on Daystar, and Joanie Lamb owned Daystar. And within roughly a year of his divorce being finalized, he was dating her. Joni and Doug married on June 10th, 2023. And almost immediately, Doug was appearing on her show, on the network he had reportedly long wanted access to. But before the wedding happened, the warnings were already coming in. Her adult children, Jonathan, Rachel, and Rebecca, raised concerns. Jonathan and his wife, Susie, were particularly vocal about the timing of Doug's divorce and whether he had legitimate biblical grounds for leaving Lisa. Longtime family friend and counselor Denise Boggs, someone who had counseled Joni through years of ministry, wrote a letter saying that Joni was, in her words, under deception. Pastors raised concerns. A portion of Joni's own audience raised concerns. Pastor Jimmy Evans, who mentored Joni and Doug through the relationship, reportedly refused to meet with Lisa Weiss or hear her account. He took Doug's word alone as sufficient. And according to Jonathan and Susie Lamb, Lisa Weiss was willing to reconcile. But no one in Doug's circle was interested in hearing that. Joni heard all of these warnings, and she moved forward anyway. Now, was that her right as a grown woman? Absolutely. But here is the question I want to leave with you right now, and we will come back to it before this video ends. If Doug Weiss is truly a trained marriage counselor, a man whose entire professional identity is built on restoration and reconciliation, did he ever turn that expertise toward his own household? Did he ever use it to help Joni reconcile with her son? Hold that question. We are coming back to it. Here is where this story stops being about a controversial marriage and becomes something much more serious. Jonathan Lamb was the son of Joni and Marcus Lamb. He was the vice president of Daystar. He had grown up in that ministry. His whole life was wrapped up in the work his parents had built. And in November 2024, his mother fired him. Joni stated the decision followed a 15-month review of Jonathan's performance. She accused him of fabricating a smear campaign against the network. Jonathan and Susie told a very different story. They said they had been spiritually abused. That was when they raised concerns about Doug's background, about the marriage, about decisions being made at Daystar, and they were silenced, pressured, and ultimately pushed out. They said Jonathan was given an ultimatum in November 2023, sign an NDA or lose his board seat and his VP role. He refused to sign, and a year later, he was gone. Think about that. A son was fired from the ministry his father founded and his mother co-built because he would not stay quiet. And then it got worse. Earlier, I asked you to hold a question. Here it is again. Did Doug Weiss, the trained marriage counselor, the man who built a career on reconciliation, ever try to bring Joni and Jonathan back together? Because here is what we know happened instead. When Joanie Lamb was dying, Susie Lamb revealed that Jonathan and his family were close by. They were, in her words, down the road. They were never called. Susie wrote on social media, they knew she was dying yesterday evening, and they didn't call Jonathan to come say goodbye. A son, down the road, and no one picked up the phone. Susie also wrote, I'm angry because the love was real. Not angry at Joni. Angry at the situation. Angry at what was stolen. Because she still loved her mother-in-law. Jonathan still loved his mother. The door was always open on their side. And now it is closed forever. There is no public record, none, of Doug Weiss ever publicly advocating for Jonathan to be restored. No statement, no known effort to bring the family back together. The man whose professional identity is reconciliation appears to have been silent on the most important broken relationship in his own household. That silence is its own kind of answer. Now, I want to be precise here, because precision matters. We cannot say with certainty that Doug Weiss caused Joanie Lamb's health decline. We cannot say he orchestrated her estrangement from Jonathan. We do not have those facts, and I will not pretend otherwise. What we can say is this. From the moment this relationship began, Joanie Lamb's world began fracturing. Her children were divided. Her most trusted advisors were pushing back. Her audience was split. Her son and daughter-in-law ended up publicly accusing the network of spiritual abuse. And Joni herself, a woman who built her public ministry on the principles of restoration and covenant, fired her own son from the ministry his father helped build. And now, Joni has passed away, at 65, with that reconciliation unfinished. We also know that when Doug Weiss learned of Joni's declining health in the weeks before her death, he announced it to the public. He framed her health journey for the audience. He was the one standing at the front of that narrative. Not Jonathan. Not her children. Doug. And the profound irony at the center of all of this is this. Doug Weiss is a man who has written books on healing marriages, who has counseled couples through the deepest wounds imaginable, who has built an empire on the language of restoration. But when it came to the most broken relationship in his own home, the one between a mother and her son, there is no evidence that he lifted a finger to heal it. I want to close by saying something clearly. Joanie Lamb was not a weak woman. She was not naive. She was not simply swept away by romance. She was a sharp, experienced, deeply faithful woman who made a decision, and she stood by that decision to the end. But love can blind even the strongest among us, and the tragedy is not that she loved Doug Weiss. The tragedy is what that love cost her. It cost her the trust of her children. It cost Jonathan his position at the ministry he was born into. It cost Joni herself the reconciliation that, based on everything Susie Lamb has said publicly, was never truly out of reach. She passed away at 65. Her son was down the road. And the phone never rang. That is a wound that goes beyond divorce controversy, board politics, and NDA disputes. That is a family story, a mother and son story, and it ended without resolution. Doug Weiss built his career on helping people heal. He marketed himself as the expert, and the one relationship in his immediate orbit that needed the most healing was left broken. That deserves to be said, not with cruelty, but clearly. I want to hear from you. Do you think Doug Weiss bore a responsibility to help reconcile Joni and Jonathan, and failed that responsibility? Or do you believe the estrangement was already too deep by the time he entered the picture? And for those of you who have watched Daystar for years, who have prayed for this family, what do you feel right now? Drop it in the comments. This conversation matters. If this video gave you something to think about, share it. Because these stories deserve more than gossip. They deserve honest examination. And if you're new here, this channel covers accountability in the church with honesty and care. Subscribe, and you won't miss what's coming next. Rest in peace, Joanie Lamb. May the reconciliation that was stolen here on earth be made whole in eternity.